The airlock had not finished cycling when Commander Varakos drew her sidearm and pointed it at. The human did not flinch. He stood there in the depressurization chamber with his hands loose at his sides, blood drying brown along his jaw from a cut he had not bothered to explain, wearing the kind of expression that belonged on a man deciding between two breakfast options. Like the weapon aimed between his eyes was a mild inconvenience. "You walked through a debris field," Vera said. Her voice had the texture of gravel being poured into a metal drum. "On foot. My shuttle was gone," he said. "The field was between me and you? That field has killed 3 of my pilots." "Yeah," he said. "I noticed." His name was Cole Harper. He was 31 years old, a salvage specialist contracted to the Galactic Recovery Authority, and he had just crossed 400 meters of spinning. Razor-edged wreckage with nothing but a standard-issue suit and what appeared to be calm breathing. The sensor logs had already confirmed it. The bridge crew had watched in silence. No one had spoken a single word while he walked. Vara lowered the weapon by 3 degrees. "Not all the way. You are either the bravest human I have ever encountered," she said, "or the most irrational." "My mom always said those were the same thing." She stared at him. He looked back at her without blinking, without shifting weight, without performing calm the way most beings performed calm. The held breath, the rigid jaw, the visible effort of controlling fear. There was no effort in him. The calm was just there, sitting in him the way bones sit in skin. Varakos had a reputation that preceded her by roughly 3 star systems. She had commanded 17 combat engagements. She had received a ceremonial scar from the War Council of the Dravathi, which was a thing that happened only twice in recorded history. She had once negotiated a ceasefire while actively on fire. Beings did not make eye contact with her for more than 2 seconds if they could help it. Cole Harper had been holding eye contact for 45 seconds. She holstered the weapon. "Decontamination bay?" she said. "Oh, then medical. Then you will explain to me why you were in that wreckage field in the first place?" "Sure," he said. Then he looked at her, not at the scar, not at the rank insignia, not at the weapon, just at her, the way a person looks at another person. "You've got blood on your collar, too, by the way." She touched her collar. Her fingertips came back red. She had not noticed. She had been in a combat situation for 11 hours, and she had not noticed her own wound because she had been too busy managing everything else. No one on her crew had told her. Not because they didn't see it, they saw everything, but because no one told Varakos she was. "You did not do that." Cole Harper had done that. She watched him walk toward the decontamination bay, rolling his shoulder once like a man who had pulled a muscle doing yard work. And she felt something settle in her chest that she did not immediately have a word for. It took her 4 seconds to find the word. In the decontamination bay, while the sterilization cycle ran, Cole sat on the bench and looked at the ceiling and thought about the debris field. He had counted 11 pieces large enough to split a hull. He had gone between them using momentum and very small course corrections, treating the whole thing like a river he already knew the current of, reading it 2 moves ahead. It was not bravery. His father had taught him to read moving obstacles in the flooded drainage canals near their house, and when he was 8, and the principle was the same at 8 years old or 31, in floodwater or in space. The universe was just physics with better lighting. The medical officer, a young Tharesi with green-gray skin and 4 hands, patched his jaw and told him he had 2 fractured ribs. "I know," Cole said. "You crossed a debris field with 2 fractured ribs." "I know," Cole said again. The medical officer made a sound that translated roughly as deeply unsettled and went to file A. Cole pulled on the clean shirt they had given him and walked out into the corridor. And the first person he saw was Varakos, standing at the far end, looking at a tactical display with her arms crossed. Someone had cleaned the blood from her collar. The wound beneath it had been sealed. She was looking at the display like she was angry at it, like it had said something she found personally offensive. She had a scar along the left side of her jaw. Not the ceremonial one, a different one, older, the kind that didn't get clean edges. And she wore it the way people wear something they've... Her posture was built from years of being the person every room reorganized itself around. She took up space the way mountains took up space. Cole walked toward the tactical display because that was where the information was, and he needed to understand what had happened to his shuttle. He stopped beside her. She did not look at him. "The debris field," he said. "Was that from the freighter that went down 4 days ago? The Alderaan run?" "Yes." "So whatever hit the freighter is still out here?" "Yes." He looked. The scatter pattern of the debris was wrong. Not the way a drive failure scattered. Not the way a collision scattered. It had the signature of something that had been taken apart from the outside, 1 section at a time, in a specific sequence. "That's methodical," he said. "That's not an accident." She turned her head and looked at him. And for the first time since the airlock, the expression on her face was not assessment. It was something adjacent to interest. It is not. How many crew on the freighter? 42. Survivors? 3. In critical condition? Cole looked at the debris pattern again. He was not a military man. He was a salvager, which meant he spent his professional life reading the wreckage of things that had gone wrong, reverse engineering disasters from the evidence they left behind. It was, in a strange way, a perfect qualification for this exact moment. Whatever did this, he said, it wanted the cargo bay intact. Look, the separation points avoid the aft hold entirely. Everything else is gone, but that section is still in one piece. Vera looked at the display. She looked at it the way she had not looked at it before. She had been looking for an attacker. Cole had looked for a purpose. Those were 2 different questions, and they had different answers, and the second one was faster. Navigator, she said, not raising her voice because she never raised her voice. Pull up the Alderaan manifest. Cargo Bay 4, specifically. The navigator pulled it up. They both read it at the same time. The silence that followed had weight. Outside the view screen, the debris field turned slowly in the dark, piece by piece, like a sentence that had been taken apart and left for someone else to read. Cole Harper had just read it. Varakos had been staring at it for 11 hours. She did not say anything else, but she did not move away from where he was standing either, and in the language of a woman who moved with absolute precision and intention, he didn't push it, he just kept reading the manifest. The cargo bay held 40 crates labeled agricultural equipment, bonded and sealed with triple authority lock codes that agricultural equipment had never once in the history of commerce required. Someone had come out here for those crates. And now Cole Harper and Varakos were standing in the exact same patch of space, with a damaged ship, 2 fractured ribs between them, and whatever had destroyed the freighter still close enough to still be relevant. The debrief could wait. The question was whether what was out there would wait with it. The answer to that question arrived at 0300 hours in the form of a contact on the long-range sensor array that was not using any registered transponder signal and was not slowing down. Cole was in the crew quarters they had assigned him, not sleeping, lying on his back looking at the ceiling the way he did when a problem was still assembling itself, in the back of his mind. He heard the alert tone and was in the corridor before most of the crew had finished sitting up. Vara was already on the bridge. She was wearing full tactical kit, and the bridge crew were at their stations with the specific quality of alertness that meant nobody had told them to be alert. They just were, because she was. And she radiated operational urgency the way a sun radiated heat. Not by trying, just by existing. Cole stepped onto the bridge and no one stopped him, which he noted and filed away. The contact on the sensor screen was large. It was running dark. No emissions, no signal, no heat signature that matched any known drive type. The only reason they had it at all was the gravitational shadow it was throwing. A slight warping of the background field that the ship's navigation system had flagged as, "It's not Dravathi," said the sensor officer, "and it's not council registered." "No," Vera agreed. "The heading puts it on a direct intercept course for the intact cargo bay section," Cole said. Both the sensor officer and Vera looked at him. "I was looking at the debris pattern earlier," he said. "I know where the bay ended up. That thing is not heading for us. It's heading for the bay. We're just in the way." Vera turned back to the screen. She processed this for approximately 1 second. "Navigation, adjust our position. Put us between the contact and the cargo bay." "Commander," the navigation officer said, "with careful professional neutrality, that will place us directly in its approach vector." "Yes," Vera said. "That is the point." Cole watched the ship's position shift on the tactical display. They were now sitting in exactly the spot that the approaching contact would need to cross to, reach what it had come back to collect. It was a move that required either authority or complete disregard for the natural instinct toward. Vara had both, and she wore them as naturally as her rank insignia. "Open a channel on all frequencies," she said. The communications officer opened it. "Unregistered vessel," Vera said, and her voice went out across the dark in 11 languages simultaneously, translated by the ship's protocol array, flat and clean, and carrying 0 doubt. "You are on an intercept course with debris from a destroyed civilian freighter. This ship is conducting an official recovery and investigation under authority of the Galactic. Alter your course or identify yourself." The channel sat open. Cole was watching the gravitational shadow. It was not altering course, but it had slowed. Not stopped, slowed. The way something slows when it is deciding. "It understood you," he said. "I know. And it's deciding." "Yes." He looked at the side of her face. She was watching the screen with that same expression she had aimed at the tactical display. Earlier, the one that wasn't anger exactly, but lived in the same building as anger, on a higher floor, already 3 moves ahead. He noticed the set of her jaw, the way her hands were still, not gripped, not braced, just open and ready, her whole body calibrated and waiting. There was a word for people who went toward the hard thing without performing courage about it. Cole knew the word. He had learned it watching his father walk into floodwater to pull a car out and come back, dripping and unceremonious, saying nothing, just drying his hands and asking what was for dinner. Ready was the word. Varakos was the readiest person he had ever been on a ship with. Sideways, a lateral shift, the gravitational shadow swinging like the needle of a compass, looking for north, testing. It's looking for an angle, the sensor officer said. Let it look, Vera said. Navigation, mirror every adjustment. Wherever it moves, we face it. The two ships, one visible, one not, turned slowly in the dark like two people circling each other in a quiet room, each one reading the other, each one doing math. Cole said, Can I see the cargo manifest again? Someone handed him a tablet without being asked. He read the agricultural equipment entries again, then scrolled to the point of origin. The freighter had departed from a station in the outer Kessel corridor. Mid-rim, the kind of logistics hub where what was written on a crate and what was in a crate were sometimes different things for legitimate reasons and sometimes for other reasons. He scrolled to the booking authority. The name of the contracting entity was 3 lines long and corporate formal in the way that names were corporate formal when they were designed to be unreadable without time. She didn't look away from the screen. The freighter was contracted by a logistics subsidiary, he said, which is owned by a holding company, which is registered to an address in the outer rim that doesn't exist. I am aware of how shell companies work. The parent entity, he said, is registered under a planetary authority that I recognize because I spent 8 months doing salvage work in that sector. He paused. This isn't a pirate operation. Whoever is in that ship out there, they're government. And they came back because those crates have something in them that they cannot let a Galactic Recovery Council ship open. Vera was quiet for 2 seconds. That was a long time for her. How certain are you? She said. 70%, Cole said, which is higher than I usually like before saying something out loud. She looked at him then, the same way she had looked at the tactical display after he had pointed out the cargo bay. Separation pattern, not like she was surprised, but like a door had been opened that she had been standing next to for a while. Sensor officer, she said. Is the contact still testing angles? Yes. Ma'am. Then it is not prepared to fire on us, she said. It is still deciding whether we are worth the complication. She stepped forward 1 step, which on a military bridge was a movement with meaning. If those crates contain what this pattern suggests they contain, we are standing at the center of something significantly larger than a freighter. Accident. Yeah, Cole said. And you walked into it, she said, through a debris field with broken ribs, because your shuttle was gone. Geometry, he said. She looked at him for a half-second longer than necessary. Then she turned back to the screen, and her voice went out across the dark again. You have 30 seconds to respond, or I will begin broadcasting your gravitational signature, and the cargo manifest of the freighter your organization destroyed on all emergency frequencies. The response came in 22 seconds. It was a voice, flat, synthesized, running through a scrambler, but a voice, speaking in Galactic Standard with an accent that Cole's ear caught and filed. His 70% went to 90. Recovery vessel, the voice said. You are carrying a civilian contractor. Ask him to step off the bridge. Vera did not move. She did not look at Cole. She did not adjust a single degree of her posture. He stays, she said, and closed the channel. The contact shifted again on the sensor display. This time it moved closer. Cole had been in bad situations before. Not combat situations, salvage situations, which were different in the way that a river in flood was different from a river on a quiet. The physics were the same. The danger was real, but the rhythm was slower, more negotiable. You had time to read it. This was not a salvage situation. This was the quiet morning river deciding to become something else. Vara ran the bridge like it was a precision instrument, which it was, and like she was the hand on the dial, which she was. Orders left her mouth at a pace that was neither fast nor slow. It was the pace of a person who had decided exactly what needed to happen and was now simply narrating the execution. Communication array on record. Cole stood near the secondary display station and stayed out of the way. He was good at that, being still when stillness was what a situation needed. He watched the gravitational shadow on the sensor screen. It had stopped circling. It was just close now, sitting in space about 200 kilometers off the bow, which at interstellar distances was essentially the same as standing in the same room. They want to know if we opened the crates, he said. Vara glanced at him. They're not attacking, he said, and they're not leaving. The only reason to do that is if the outcome matters. Specifically, whether we've seen what's inside. If we already opened them, killing us accomplishes something. If we haven't, maybe it accomplishes nothing. The bridge was quiet. He's right, said the sensor officer, which seemed to slightly surprise the sensor officer. We have not opened the crates, Vora said, to the room in general, a statement of current fact. Then we have a window, Cole said. A narrow one. She looked at him with the particular attention of someone who was not used to, being 2 steps behind and had just found themselves 1 step behind, which was still 1 step closer than usual. Say it, she said. We broadcast the manifest publicly, he said. The shell company chain, the planetary registry, the cargo bay separation pattern, the approach of an unregistered vessel. We put it all on the open emergency channel, right now, before they close the distance. Once it's out there, killing us doesn't take the information back. And if they fire on us before we finish broadcasting, that's the part I like less, Cole admitted. Something crossed her face that was not quite a smile, but lived 2 doors down from one. Prepare the full data packet. Manifest, sensor logs, gravitational signature record, and the approach trajectory going back to first contact. Ready to transmit on your order? Commander. She looked at the sensor screen. The contact had not moved, close enough to mean it, far enough to still be a choice. He registered that she had used his name. She had not used it before. It was not a significant thing, probably. If this goes wrong, she said, and she said it the way people stated weather conditions, factual and without drama, the debris field will be significantly more crowded. I know, he said. You are not required to be here. He looked at the sensor screen. The debris field, still turning slowly behind them, still holding its broken pieces in the dark. 3 survivors in critical condition, crates full of something that a government somewhere did not want a recovery ship to open. She looked at him for a moment that lasted exactly long enough. The data packet went out on every open emergency frequency, in 11 languages. With a broadcast strength that would reach 4 relay stations within the hour and a council hub, the contact on the sensor screen moved. It accelerated hard. A massive burn that lit up the passive sensors like a city at night. Gravity and exhaust and the signature of a drive pushed past comfortable limits. It had done the math and decided that killing a Galactic Recovery Council vessel broadcasting on all emergency frequencies, with a data record already in transit to 4 relay stations, was a worse outcome than disappearing. The bridge was quiet. Cole let out a breath through his nose. Did I actually just help you call the bluff of a government black operation? He said. Okay. He nodded once. That's a new one. The communications officer said, Commander, we're already getting response pings from Relay Station 7. They received the packet. Good, Vora said. She turned from the screen and walked to the command chair and sat in it with the same economy of motion she did everything with. We will wait for council backup before approaching the cargo section. She pulled up something on. She turned her head and looked at Cole, who had sat down on the floor against the secondary display station because standing for 3 hours with 2 fractured ribs was beginning to be something he had feelings about. You should be in medical, she said. I'll go in a few minutes, he said, when my hands stop. She looked at his hands. They were not stopping. She understood then that he had meant something different, not a physical thing. The cargo section, she said, to the room but not to no one. When backup arrives, we open it. Yeah, Cole said. Whatever is in those crates. Yeah, it will be the beginning of something much larger. Usually is, he said, when people go through this much effort to keep something quiet. She was quiet for a moment. The screen showed clear space. The debris field rotated behind them like it always had, patient and indifferent. You read debris, she said, for a living. I read what went wrong, he said. So someone knows what happened. She thought about that. Someone always knows what happened, she said. Not always, he said. That's why the job exists. She turned and looked at him directly, and for a long time, and the expression on her face was not assessment, and it was not the temperature of command. It was something underneath both of those. Something that had been sitting quietly through 11 hours of crisis and a debris field walk and a government standoff, and was now just present, just visible, without her having decided to let it be. Cole looked at the ceiling. For what it's worth, he said, I've been in a lot of bad situations. I've been on ships when things went sideways. I've been around people who were good at their jobs. He paused. You're something else. Varakos, commander of the recovery vessel, 17 combat engagements, ceremonial scar of the Dravathi War Council. Had negotiated a ceasefire while on fire. Had never once in her professional life been surprised by a compliment because she had never once, in her professional life, received one that was not about her rank, or her record, or her reputation. This was not about any of those things. She sat very still. The bridge crew were all pretending to look at their screens. "The debris field," she said finally. It came out at a different frequency than her voice usually had. "You walked through it. You put your ship in front of an unknown contact to protect a cargo. I think we've established that neither of us is that worried about bad odds." She was quiet. Then she said, "The medical bay?" "Yeah," he said. "Go now." "Yes, ma'am," he said, and when he stood up and walked toward the door, there was nothing remarkable about the way he walked. No performance of being fine, just a man with 2 fractured ribs walking down a corridor because someone had told him to. He did not look back. He did not need to. Varakos looked at the cleared sensor screen for a long time after he left. Her hands, resting on the command console, were absolutely still. The bridge crew remained focused on their instruments with tremendous professionalism. The Council backup arrived 6 hours later in the form of 2 heavy-class vessels and a diplomatic transport carrying 3 officials whose jurisdiction over what had been found in the Alderaan. Debris field was still being argued about when Cole walked out of the medical bay with his ribs, sealed, and a protein bar he had located from somewhere. The cargo section had been brought aboard by then. It was sitting in Bay 4 under armed guard, unopened, waiting for the jurisdictional argument to resolve itself the way those arguments always resolved. Slowly, with a lot of talking, and finally with someone senior enough saying the actual words that gave someone else permission to do what everyone already knew needed to be done. Cole ate the protein bar and sat on a crate outside Bay 4 and watched the officials talk, through the viewport in the corridor. Vara came and stood next to him. She had changed out of tactical kit. She was in standard commander's uniform now, which on her looked like tactical kit would look on anyone else. Just the clothes of someone who was ready for something. "They're going to argue for another 2 hours, Cole said. "At minimum," she agreed. "What's in the crates?" he said. "You know, don't you?" "I have a strong hypothesis," she said. "Are you going to tell me?" She looked at him sidelong. You are a civilian salvage contractor with a temporary visitor status on this vessel." "So?" "No. So not yet." He ate the protein bar. "The company chain you identified?" she said. "The Outer Rim Registry. How did you know that sector?" "I did a job out there," he said, recovering wreckage from a station that had been decommissioned. "What kind of station?" The kind," he said, "that gets decommissioned instead of shut down." She was quiet. "So I know what's in the crates." "I thought you might." "And the government that doesn't want us to open them?" "Yes." "How big is this?" he said. Not a question, really. More like saying it out loud to check if it felt as large as it looked. "Larger than this ship," Vera said. "Larger than this recovery operation. If the contents are what the manifest anomalies suggest, and if the registry chain traces where the evidence indicates, we are looking at a supply operation that has been running for approximately 4 years through neutral space below Council detection, using civilian freight lanes. Yes. And the freighter crew," he said. "The 42. Vera said nothing. That nothing said everything. Cole crushed the protein bar wrapper in one hand. It was a small, quiet motion, the kind that a person made when they were feeling something they were not going to say out loud, in a corridor outside a cargo bay with 3 council officials arguing 30 meters away. "The 3 survivors," he said. "Critical condition," Vara said, "but the medical team is optimistic about 2 of them." 2 out of 42? "Yes." He looked at the cargo bay door. The guard standing at it was Tharesi, one of Vara's crew, young, standing straight, holding the vigil with a kind of posture that meant they understood what they were guarding, and, "I want to be in the room when they open those crates," Cole said. "That is not standard protocol for civilian contractors." "I know." She turned and looked at him. The angle of the corridor light caught the old scar along her jaw, the one that was not ceremonial, the one she had stopped noticing. "You found the pattern in the debris field," she said. "You identified the cargo bay separation. You traced the registry chain. You proposed the broadcast solution." "That's geometry," he said. "Stop calling it that." He looked at her. "You are not a man who stumbles into things," she said. "You read situations, and you moved through them the way you moved through that debris field, with a plan you do not feel the need to announce." He did not deny it. "I would like to know," she said, and her voice was at a lower register than usual, stripped of some quality it usually carried, what you were actually doing in that sector before your shuttle was destroyed. The corridor was, the officials argued behind the viewport. The guard stood at the door. Cole looked at the ceiling the way he had looked at the ceiling in the crew quarters, the way he looked at things when the problem was assembling itself. "I was doing a job," he said, "for the Recovery Authority. For an office that contracts through the Recovery Authority." "And the shuttle," she said. Wasn't destroyed by the debris field, he said. I was already in the suit when the debris field happened. He paused. The shuttle was gone before that. The air in the corridor changed. The temperature and pressure were identical, but something shifted in the quality of the silence. There is a secondary investigation, Vara said. There is a reason, he said, that the Recovery Authority's anomaly detection flag on the Alderaan freight lane triggered 3 days before the freighter was destroyed. He looked at her. I was already here, he said. Otur already watching. Varakos stood in the corridor outside Cargo Bay 4 with the straightest posture of anyone who had stood in that corridor all day, and she went through a recalibration that was entirely internal and entirely invisible, except to someone who was paying the specific kind of attention that Cole Harper had been paying since he was paying that attention? How long, she said, before the people who sent that ship know that the broadcast reached the relay stations? They already know, he said. The question is what they do next. And the council officials currently arguing about jurisdiction. Don't know everything, he said. The office I work for has a separate report. She turned and looked at Bay 4 and then back at him, and the expression on her face was the most unguarded thing he had seen from her, and it lasted for exactly 1 second before the command layer came back. But he had seen it. It was the face of a person who had been carrying a very heavy thing alone and had just realized, without having planned for it, that someone else had already picked up the other end. The officials will finish their argument, she said, and they will open the crates. And it will be the beginning of something much larger. You said that earlier. Yeah, he said. How much larger? She said. 4 years of supply runs, he said. Whatever is in those crates is the physical evidence. The registry chain is the thread. You pull that thread and you find out where it starts. And your office has been pulling from the other end. She was quiet for a long time. Long enough that one of the council officials inside the bay noticed her through the viewport and made an acknowledging gesture, which she returned without looking like she was in any way available for that conversation yet. Yeah. What do you need from me? She said, direct and operational, the way she did everything. He looked at her, at the steady hands, at the posture that had been ready for 11 hours and was still ready. Access to your sensor logs going back 14 days, he said. The full array, not the summary. And the medical records on the 3 survivors. Specific attention to any cargo-related injuries. Done, she said. And, he said, and stopped. When this is over, he said. However over it gets, I would like to buy you something. Coffee, if they have it. Whatever the Theresi equivalent is, if they don't. The corridor was quiet. The guards stood at the door, professional and oblivious. Varakos, who had negotiated ceasefires and carried ceremonial scars and commanded 17 engagements and never once been surprised by a compliment because compliments had always been about the rank, the record, the reputation, stood in the corridor and looked at a man with healed, fractured ribs and protein, bar wrapper in his hand, who had walked through a debris field because it was between him and where he was going, and who had said nothing about rank or record and nothing about reputation, who had noticed her collar, who had said, "You're something else," who was asking now, at the end of an 11-hour crisis and a government standoff and a secondary investigation that was larger than both if she wanted something to drink. She said, the Theresi equivalent is called Vel tea. Is it good? It is terrible, she said. It tastes like warm metal. Sounds great, he said. And for the first time in 11 hours, and possibly longer than that, and in front of a guard who was very focused on not noticing, Varakos smiled. It was not a large smile, but it was completely real. The officials stopped arguing 17 minutes later. They opened the crates, and what was inside them started the largest investigation in Galactic Recovery Council history, the opening of which would require, over the following 3 months, the specific and irreplaceable skills of both a recovery contractor who read disasters like sentences and a commander who had been ready for exactly this for longer than anyone had asked her. They opened the crates, and Vera and Cole stood at the threshold and looked at what was inside, and neither of them flinched. And the universe, per its usual policy, kept going. But something had started. One of them was the investigation. The other one was smaller and larger at the same time, the way those things usually were, the way a person looking at you like you are a person. Just a person, not a rank, not a record, not a reputation, could be both the simplest thing and the thing that stays. The Vel tea was terrible. They drank it anyway.